Welcome to this edition of the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Steve Ward. Andy Mercer and I, about 3 years ago, created the High Strangeness Factor, which of course is affiliated with the Paranormal UK Radio Network and is copyrighted by the same. And tonight, we're actually going to be celebrating a milestone of 3 years, which sounds really funny. And usually milestones for me at my age, I don't even want to talk about. But anyway, we're going to be celebrating with two really good friends, which I will introduce in just a moment. But Andy, welcome back to the show and the third anniversary.
No, it's amazing. It does really seem to have flown by, I must admit. I've tried to be on a few more than I was before because it was sort of very occasionally on. I'm trying to be on a bit more regularly, but I couldn't miss this one for definite. It really had to be on. So yeah, it's great to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'll just let the listeners know that at some point, the house, the abode that I'm living in, is going to be sold, and there might be an interruption in the dynamic programs of the High Strangeness Factor. But I have a stellar producer that will fill in the gaps, I'm sure.
And I'll find something.
Do something stellar. Okay. So anyway, before we get going, is there anything we should promote for you? Anything really exciting going on, your writing or whatever?
Well, at the moment, the big thing I've been working on for a while, of course, is my cryptic files videos
on
YouTube, which are going pretty well. I must admit, I'm getting a good few hundred subscribers now, and I've got a good few hundred hours of viewing done, which is good considering each video is only about 10 minutes long. I've been releasing one a week since basically Halloween after that first started, and I do one a week, it's about 10, 15 minutes long, and it comes out on a Saturday. So it's going pretty well. It's my little collection of ghost and paranormal videos from around the world where I offer some analysis of them. I mean, there are a few people who do these like top 5 ghost videos, but they just show the clip and nothing else. But I try and do some analysis, sort of slow the footage down, have a closer look, adjust brightness to get a clearer look on it. And so that's been keeping me fairly busy. It takes me about an hour and a half to do 1 minute's worth of video footage. It's quite a labour-intensive process. It's enjoyable, but I like to make sure it looks good. I've spent quite a bit of time working on these, so that's kept me quite busy. I am working on a couple of books at the moment. I don't want to say too much about either one of them because they've not been announced with the publishers yet, but I'm sort of partaking in a collection of articles in one book and a lexicon in another one, which I'll talk more about nearer the time when they come out. So I'm also doing the final touches to the second edition of the first book I ever had published, which is on John Dee's Enochian magic, which is all a bit mysterious. But I've written a new chapter for the book. One of the areas of debate, I won't go into great detail because it might bore people, but one of the areas of debate with John Dee is he was an Elizabethan astrologer, scientist, mathematician, a friend of Queen Elizabeth I. And among one of the things he was involved in was what's called the Enochian scrying, which were an attempt to communicate with what he thought were angels of God. What he actually communicated with would be something that we could discuss at some point. It's that kind of probably transhuman personality type of things, the others as we talk about. I think it's along those lines. And there's always been a debate as to what exactly he was using, what apparatus, what crystals or mirrors he was using. So my article, the extra essay, goes into a lot of detail about the history of the various items he's supposed to have used, because it's trying to clear up a bit of a debate there. But that's interesting because it's digging through sort of old records and trying to read handwriting from 500 years ago and that kind of thing. So it's quite a task, but it's good fun nonetheless. I'm quite enjoying working on that one. So these things are keeping me busy at the moment. But yeah, so things are pretty good.
Well, you're never going to be bored, that's for sure.
Well, no.
Well, without any further ado, let's introduce Brain and Terrie Seech, who have at least one or both have been with us for all the anniversary shows. So, Brain and Terrie, welcome back to the High Strangeness Factor.
How you doing, Andy and Steve?
Hello.
Beyond
Thanks,
wonderful.
Steve. Hi, Andy. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, good.
So, to get started now, even though you guys have been on before, let's just talk a little bit about you guys and how you got into all this. And I invite people to go back and look at the previous shows, and also Brian and I did one, was it last year, on winged cryptids as well. So it's definitely worth checking out. And I've had conversations with both you guys on the show, and it's always interesting. But how did you guys get started? I know Terrie was watching some of the shows of the 70s which is funny because I will gather the children around and tell them stories about the old days, the 1970s, that they've never heard. But but wasn't just that. You also had some ghost experiences, I believe, when you were young.
Yes, and also a UFO experience.
Wow, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was in our in the neighborhood where I grew up. My dad and a bunch of us kids from the neighborhood were out on the street playing. He was teaching us how to play kick the can.
Yeah.
And there was this slow moving, I guess it was like an oblong craft in the sky. And we all stopped to look at it. And my dad said it wasn't a plane. It didn't look like a plane. There was no sound to it. And we watched it go real slow across the sky. And at that time, one of my friends was in the same grade as Brian, and she knew him, and she had called him and to tell him about it because she knew he was interested in this stuff. And unfortunately, it was later in the evening, like going towards evening, and he wasn't able to come out. But she told him about the experience that I had, and I had told him about it after we had met, and we hadn't met yet. So it was years later when we finally met.
Oh, okay. Now it looked like a metallic, some kind of a metal solid craft.
Yeah, like a cigar shape.
Okay, and that's a very populated area, right?
Yeah, it's a suburb, but it's a neighborhood. There's lots of houses, and it's in Beaver County in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So yeah, we're probably like 15 minutes from the Pittsburgh airport, and probably about a half an hour from the city of Pittsburgh.
And was it moving in kind of an unconventional manner?
No, not really. It was just going across the sky. It was just really slow. Like a plane wouldn't have gone that slow.
Okay.
And Steve, that was actually my first UFO investigation, because the following day, right after school, me and my best friend Kent, we went down to the area. We were looking around. We walked down in the woods in case there was any evidence, but unfortunately there was none. But so that was kind of like my first unofficial UFO investigation.
So did you bring your laminated UFO investigator cards with you?
I forgot at that time.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't have to interview anybody then, because they wouldn't have paid any attention. Also, how young were you, Terrie, when you started having ghost experiences?
Well, I had an experience that it was different than a ghost experience, and it was before I was a teenager, because my first ghost experience, I think I was around 12 or 13.
Okay.
But the other thing that happened, and I don't know if I had talked about this before, my sister, and maybe I have, I don't remember. My sister and I shared a room, and we always slept with the door closed because I couldn't sleep if it had to be dark. I couldn't sleep if there were lights. And I thought I had woken up. It could have been a dream. I don't know. But a hooded figure came into our room through the door, walked towards my bed and went over me and out. There was a window above my bed. And that window is actually like on the second story, because below our bedroom was the garage and the driveway was down below there.
Well, that'll get your attention. And Brian was nowhere in the area at the time, right?
Not to my knowledge, no.
That's good. Well, that's really amazing. And you were captivated by some of the shows of the 70s, like what was it, In Search of?
Yes.
Is that one? Yeah. And when did Sightings come out? Does anybody remember? Didn't really watch it.
I think that was the 80s.
I think that 80s.
80s?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I didn't watch a lot of In Search of, but I do remember some of the specials that came over, some of the 2-hour specials, and some of them were, you could see them in the theater as well. I think there was one that Peter Graves hosted. And
yes, that was called Mysterious Monsters. That's what actually got me into the Bigfoot phenomenon.
It was like it was taken in 16 millimeter and then blown up to theater size, so it was all kind of grainy. But it was very cool because in those days, I mean, the 70s was pretty good for having magazines and subscriptions you could get.
Yes.
but
Yeah.
they didn't cover much on TV or in the theater. So that was kind of something that was really you know captivating. And Brian, how did your interest in UFOs and this develop?
Well, basically, I grew up a sci-fi and monster horror geek, which I kind of still am right now. I'm just a
Okay,
lot older,
I can
and
relate to that.
and I was just always interested in one of the ones, that, especially with the UFOs, was all of the sci-fi, like Earth versus the flying saucers. I think we talked about that, and it came from outer space. All
Oh
of
yeah.
these black and white movies, which later on were movies in the 70s, and then when I start buying the UFO magazines is when I'm like, wow, there's actually a real there's real phenomena. We maybe are visited by extraterrestrials, and there may be Bigfoots in our woods, and just that's kind of how I started.
Well, isn't that cool when we all first encountered that feeling that there might be that some of these things might be aliens coming from other planets. I remember that from the 60s when a buddy of mine saw a episode of You Asked for It, which is an ancient TV show, but I didn't even see it. But they ran the film of it might have been that 16 millimeter film from Utah in the 50s or whatever, or 60s. And anyway, just the thought of it was really cool. And so now as time went on, how did you guys lived in the same neighborhood when you guys met? Were you aware that you both had these strange interests in unconventional subjects?
Well, after when we were dating, we discovered we were interested in the same, like the UFOs, the ghosts, the cryptids. We realized we both had an interest in it, talking about it. And we actually it's two different neighborhoods, but we were probably a couple miles apart from each other.
Okay.
Where we grew up.
So you figured you guys should probably stay together because you might not meet anybody else that could put up with you.
True.
Well,
even to this day, Steve.
Well, in
I've had
the
to
butler.
put up for it with a lot, Steve.
Oh yeah. Well, listen,
yeah,
I do have an inkling. I do actually, but you the Butler conference that you guys are both run by Dan Hagman, and you guys are very instrumental in supporting that. But you'll meet all kinds of people there, where oftentimes the spouse has no interest whatsoever,
Yeah.
which is fine, because especially if they don't care that their spouse goes off chasing Bigfoot or watching strange lights in the sky. But it's kind of nice that you're both into this.
Yeah, I think it's a rarity. There's not.
Yes.
I mean, we do know couples, but there's not a lot of couples that do the same thing like this and the same interests.
And especially for as long.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the documentaries you've been involved with, Brian, because I know you've been when I introduced you before, you talk about being in Mountain Devil Part 2. Is that right?
Yeah, I was in Mountain Devil Part 1 and Part 2. Miss and Mutants from those all three were from Ryan Cavaline.
Okay.
I was in the just came out last year, Flatwoods. That was James Hartland. And then there was also one. And there was also one called Beasts of Our Fathers, and it's kind of like a lower grade Bigfoot movie that when we had Bigfoot days down in Beaver Creek State Park, which you were with us down there one time.
Right.
So these couple came up to me and Fred, and they started asking us real questions. Hey, do you want to be filmed for this movie? Can you tell us what some real life things that happened to you? So we did, and we signed the thing, and we didn't even remember we did it, to be honest with you. And we did it probably about 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was
and they don't.
Tasha's the one that found it.
And Fred's daughter Tasha found it and said, "Hey, you guys are in a movie." And we're like, "Really? We forgot all about it." And it was just cool to see us. I'm like, I remember that now. And again, it was like 5 years ago, and I think the DV, I mean, the movie came out, I think, last year, like, or the year and a half ago. Year and a half ago, yeah. Most people don't even know we were on it, to be honest with you, because we don't really promote ourselves as well as some others do. It's never really been that important, but we do talk about that stuff occasionally.
I imagine when you got your first residual check, that's when you remembered that you were on it.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think he's still waiting.
Well, it's funny because Ryan Cavaline interviewed me several years ago at Butler, and myself and several other people. And I thought, well, that's just going to be another one of those things that never surfaces, because I think we've all done, interviews for stuff that just went into the
I've
ether
done a
somewhere.
couple more. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so hopefully they don't use it for blackmail or anything like that in the future. But so I am happy to say, I think I'm happy to say that I was in Andy Mountain Devil Part 3, done by Ryan Cavaline. And what he did was he took some of the interview footage that I did, and I completely forgot what I was talking about. But he did something different with Mountain Devil 3, and it's done as a mockumentary. So it's kind of it's kind of the flavor of the old science fiction B movies you saw as a kid at the matinee. And we've got evil Bigfoots landing out of flying saucers, killing people. It doesn't get any better than that. And my scene comes up after our friend Dave Rupert is attacked by a really hideous looking Bigfoot, which has come out of a UFO. And Dave did some superb acting there. I mean, it was just classic. And you see him, he put his hands up and it fades out. So you don't know if the Bigfoot ate him or just ripped him to shreds. Yeah. But right after that, now the one thing I liked about the video was that Ryan does a lot of retro footage in it. He uses a lot of black and white, and that's very cool. And so you see me come on. I'm on an old, classic old black and white TV, and you'll hear me pontificating on John Keel and transmogrifications of energy for about 30 seconds to a minute. So that was kind of fun. Yeah. So
now, come on, Steve, you still have that black and white TV. Come on, why don't you admit it?
Oh, listen, well, no, got rid of it a couple of years ago, but but it was fortunately I didn't have to do any acting. It was just me, rattling on about the stuff I always rattle on about. So, and a lot of people came to a bad end in that movie. So, as far as I know, my character is still alive. What about you, Terry? Have you ever been interviewed for any other documentaries besides the ones that you guys that surfaced that you were surprised about?
That I was surprised about?
No. I mean, the one you just came out. You were kind of surprised that it had been released. You didn't know about it, but have you been interviewed for several other ones that maybe haven't surfaced yet, or
yeah, there's one. What is her name? Patricia Coleman. Yeah. Patricia Coleman interviewed us up at Erie MUFON conference. Oh, I don't remember how many years ago. She's still working on it, and we're waiting for that one to come out.
It's called It's a Paranormal Life.
Okay.
And Terry was in Mountain Devil too, also.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check those out. So let's see, and let's talk a little bit about for those that may not remember CUE, CCS, and Butler. Talk about the work that you guys do with that.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, our first group, CUE, was founded in 1986, and CUE just stands for Center for Unexplained Events. We wanted something very generic that covered all aspects of the paranormal. And later in 2012, we wanted to promote cryptids more, so we came up with Center for Cryptozoological Studies. CCS.
How did the Butler thing come about? Was that Dan's baby?
How did that? Boy, that was
we were talking to Dan about getting a conference started, and he had done something years ago up in Butler
with Stephen Greer.
Yeah, Stephen Greer, and we were talking to him about let's try, to get something together, and he was able to get a venue, the Tanglewood, at a very reasonable cost, and we said we would help him with that and get the speakers and do the promotions and stuff.
And we co-promote for him now.
Yeah. So we've been doing it for, well, he has it listed as the 15th year, but we missed 2020 because of
COVID.
So there's actually been, it's going to be 14 actual conferences.
Okay.
One of the longest running in the state of PA. Yep.
And so tell us. Oh yes. Do you have any speakers lined up for this Butler conference, which is the last weekend in April, right?
Yes, April 30th.
Yeah, we have some. He just hasn't announced them yet.
Okay, that's all right.
He's still working on getting the last.
Okay.
One of them is Fred Saluga, though. We can't tell you that.
What's that?
Oh, I said one of them is Fred Saluga.
Fred Saluga. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Nobody forgets Fred Saluga. That's for sure.
No. He's
unforgettable.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend this year because I already committed to speaking at the Beast of Bray Road conference in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. And so I'll have to convince Donna Fink, the founder of that conference, that she's going to have to stagger it at least one weekend if she does it next year, because she's, interfering with the Great Butler Conference as well.
Yeah, that would be.
Well, the Butler Conference, he does it. It's not always the same weekend. He does it. He tries to work around the Easter weekend and what they have open for that, and it's always in April.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just never know which weekend it's going to be.
Yeah, more of them have taken place in the first 2 weeks than the last 2 weeks, though.
All right.
Most of them have taken place either first or second week of April. But again, like Terry says, it's all about the availability of the
plus when Easter falls.
Plus when Easter, yeah.
Well, I'm going to really miss being there. It's going to be. I've been pretty good about attending and even speaking at one.
Yeah, we're going to miss seeing you there.
Yeah, it won't be the same.
Well, it's going to be a 3-day extravaganza for the Beast of Bray Road. So we'll see how that goes. There's going to be.
That would be interesting someday to get up there and talk about dogmen from PA and Ohio that we did. That would be interesting someday to get up there.
Well, I hope you can get there and meet Lee Hampel that owns the property there right adjacent to Bray Road and see the phenomenal photographs that he has captured on his trap cameras, the weird technology that seems to be flying around there, and the footprints that he has found, the 5-toed footprints with the pad that the people like from the DNR and various universities say that can't be true. You must be faking it. And they appear out of nowhere and then end nowhere. It's just it's just bizarre. And we sat there for 2 hours after the Beast of Bray Road conference last October. And it was just, our jaws were dropping. And he was I've told this story before, but just to reiterate, I think he spent like 45 years as a math teacher in Illinois. He, a man of science. And when he discovered this stuff going on his property, locals were telling him, there's a werewolf that lives on your woods back there. And he's saying, what the hell are you talking about? And then he's talking to people that are very credible. They're saying, yes, we've seen these upright canids. And then he saw it. And so he started putting out trap cameras, and the roadkill or whatever it was that he would put out there was taken but never photographed. It's like you've got all this weird technology flying around, and you've got these things that act like animals. I mean, they eat roadkill, they take bait, but they're somehow protected by some kind of technology where they can't be seen, or just occasionally they might get part of a shadow of them. It's just, and this guy is as down to earth and credible as you can imagine. He's tried to get universities and scientists interested in this property. And when Linda Godfrey found out about it, she lived in the area, and of course she's the one that started writing about the Beast of Bray Road. I had Lee on my show, and I asked him, I said, what was it like? And it was sort of like she was a kid in a candy store, because she had been writing about this stuff, but here on this piece of property, it's almost like a laboratory where you can investigate this. So it's and Donna Fink also there's other areas around there that seem to have a lot of high strangeness. So it's just Wisconsin seems to be a quite a hot spot, especially in the southern end.
Mhm.
So anyway, you guys made the move to my Mecca, West Virginia, home of the Mothman. So what prompted that? How did and I hate to ask how it went because I know what moving's like. I we all do. So I won't even ask that. But what prompted you to move to West Virginia? And you are how far away are you from the Point Pleasant area, hour wise?
Probably
know?
about 3 now instead of almost 4.
Okay, so you're okay. So it's a
Little
good
closer.
distance. Are you close to the Pennsylvania state line?
Yeah, we're only 7
Okay.
miles from the state line, actually.
Oh,
Yeah, we're in
okay.
the northern panhandle of Hancock County, which lies between Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Yeah, we have 3 states.
So we're like
Yeah.
7 miles from Pennsylvania and 9 miles from Steubenville,
Yeah.
Ohio.
Oh, all right. So are you going to get the assimilate the West Virginia accent? Dead
I
silence.
don't know,
Okay.
Steve.
I doubt it. We're still in the
it's-
northern part of
Hey,
West
we're
Virginia.
we're still Yinzers from Pittsburgh, around Pittsburgh. So I doubt.
well, even around Point Pleasant, you know how people want to make fun of the Southern accent and so forth.
Yes.
It's not particularly thick around the Point Pleasant area, So
Mhm.
even a Midwesterner like me can understand everything. But it's funny to hear Ashley, Jeff Wamsley's daughter. She can put on an accent like in 2 seconds. She really, she's almost multilingual, I think. So what? So I've seen pictures of your house. It kind of looks like a little cottage out in the mountains.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's good.
kind of is.
We call it Chateau de Seech.
Well, tell us about now I'm very familiar with the S Files, which is your vast library of UFO books, newsletters, all kinds of obscure stuff that you'll never find on the internet. What was it like moving all that?
Oh, that was a nightmare.
we
It
basically
took us months to pack everything up.
and then now, as far as actually unpacking it, we still need to get more bookcases. Here, basically,
Yeah, we're not totally it's not totally up.
No.
And
Yeah, basically what it is we have most of it in one room, and not a huge room either, and it bleeds over into a little section of the next room, and we actually have some other stuff down in the living room, right, and in the hallway, kind of. So it's not this huge, impressive basement that you came to. It's more parceled out now, but it's mostly still there. Like 95% of it, we did probably sell or get rid of maybe 5% of it that were doubles or things like that. But it's still there, and I think you've seen the one picture of the room now. I think we showed you the one.
Andy, I was had the privilege of visiting the S Files when it was located in Pennsylvania, and we just had a blast. They've got a copier, so I could I could request certain articles to be copied and so forth, and talk about the obscures. I mean, you had got drawers full of these obscure Bigfoot newsletters that virtually nobody has, and I know that you've been. You have loaned out various tomes and research to some pretty famous researchers over the years so that they could write their articles or their books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
that's what we figure. We figure, we spent all of this years accumulating all this stuff, and we'd like to get, some of that stuff out there. And we have, given, to writers and researchers, and we try our best to share. And we hope to someday hunker down and actually start doing a bunch of books. We have a lot of ideas what to do. It's just a matter of just us sitting down and actually putting them together. We kind of started on one already, but it's we haven't got back to it for a while. So, but there's just
that was before we started moving. So
yeah, and we will get them. I promise. It just.
Well, I started packing up books quite a while ago, trying to trying to look at books that I probably won't need this for a long time. And I've actually, don't tell anybody, but I actually ordered a book that I packed somewhere I could never find, and a couple on Kindle. I thought, oh God, I'll never. I've got a 10 by 10 storage with mostly books in it, just stacked up, not exclusively, but good. Whenever the move takes place, it's going to be like Christmas every day, opening up one of these boxes. Even though you mark them, you can't, mark them to say everything that's in it. So that's going to be pretty exciting.
I agree.
But,
Even when
Well, actually, you can if you have a book list of your library and you mark the boxes with the numbers, and then beside the title of the book, you put the number, the box that it's in.
and she did all that.
yes, but see, Terry, that would be somebody like you that was organized.
Not the sort of thing us men would do.
I'm more like you, Steve. Throw it in a box, right?
Yeah, it's
Well,
the sort of thing men would do, rather just sort of shove them in there and have a look later.
I scribble down things like mostly contactees, weird stuff, and sometimes I'll use expletives like this is another box of blanking books, and so it's going to be quite. But and getting stuff. I won't belabor this, but we have an attic here that has the ladder comes down, and it's not. It's you're trying to haul heavy stuff in boxes down from the attic on this ladder. You're taking your life in your hands. And then anyway, thank God we've got a garage. We're starting to fill the garage now because my storage.
Yeah, we're still unloading stuff from the garage, believe me.
Oh man,
It's been since what, end of August.
Well, I just okay, enough of that. I'm just I try not to think too far ahead because that would be future shock. So, but it looks like you've got a really nice place there.
Yeah, we like it. We live next to a creek, which is
behind us.
And that creek got dangerously high here about a week ago, and it was very scary. I will tell you that. Our neighbors who've lived next door, they've lived next door here for over
40 years.
40 years, and they said only once did it ever crest its banks. And literally in October, behind our property, it's on our property, but behind us, not right next to it, it actually, we had like a microburst, and we weren't home when it happened, but they said that this cloud just stayed over our house, and it was like it just dumped water, and it literally like flooded a little bit of the back of the property, and then it went back into the creek. Thank God.
Oh.
So I'm gonna build a wall here, a small little wall here in the spring on this side here, so we don't get flooded.
Yeah, normally there's like a 3-foot drop from our yard down to the creek, and then the creek has actually come up to the level with the yard.
Yeah, it's like 3 foot, probably 3.5 foot, to be honest with you. And
Wow.
it's not like it's level with the yard. No, it drops, and it was like right up, probably another what, half of a foot, and it would have went over. And so, yeah, that's what we have
all
to deal
that
with.
Rain last week and all that snow we got before that had
Now
melted.
But you know what it is? It is nice when you sit on the porch and you hear that the babbling creek. It kind of like puts you in a nice hypnotic state. It's nice when it doesn't sound like the Grand Tetons out there. It's nice. It's real. When it's not running that fast.
Almost like a Thomas Kincaid painting. I never saw any flooding in any of his paintings. They're always so serene and subdued and everything. Well, that's very cool.
Well, you'll see it when you come here. Hopefully, you can come here in the summer.
Oh yeah, I'd love it. And how are the cats doing?
They're doing good.
I was talking to Sally about you tonight, so she was looking like, when's Steve coming?
Okay, I just wondered if she asked about me, so I appreciate that. Okay, so one other thing. Did you just do some filming for one recently that's going to be called The Ridge, a DVD?
Yeah,
or a documentary?
For Small Town Monsters with Seth.
Excellent.
It's going to be a YouTube series, which I don't know when it'll be out, but I'll post it whenever it eventually comes out. And I talk about some of the experiences we've had there, and then some of the other Bigfoot experiences down where we live. So, used to live. I can't say what I mean. I still can't Still hasn't registered that I'm from West Virginia yet.
I know it's I've been in Michigan forever, except for the military, a few different places. So it would be very strange. But yeah, Small Town Monsters, great production values. They've done. They did a DVD called The Bray Road Beast, where the
yes, I saw
gentleman,
that. Very good. Very good.
Lee Hampel, the gentleman I mentioned, is there. You see him toward the end,
Yeah.
and he's showing some of his photographs, and so that's very cool. So, and of course, I was in the Mothman Legacy, which was kind of nice. So it's
it
nice.
was really good.
It's nice to be associated with a production that well done.
But hey, Steve.
Yes.
Did I ever tell you I was in the Mothman Prophecies?
I'm glad you mentioned that, Brian. Because you are listening to the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm Steve Ward, and Andy and I are talking to Brain and Terrie Seech on this 3rd anniversary show of the High Strangeness Factor, and we're about to revisit Brian's adventures on the film of the Mothman Prophecies. I do actually want to talk about this again, because we talked about it at length. I think the first show we did like 3 years ago. So so people don't have to go back through all the archives. That was really, in all seriousness, a very cool experience.
It was.
And we're talking about the Mothman Prophecies film, the one with Richard Gere, not the cheesy Sci-Fi Channel version, but yeah, it was. I've grown to really like that film. My initial reaction was a bit negative, because I thought they didn't capture enough of the book, but that's all changed. But how was it now? It was filmed in Pennsylvania. They substituted locations there for Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Chicago, and so forth. But how was it that you got the word about that they were going to be doing some filming?
Yeah, I found out it through our local newspaper, and they said, "Hey, if you have a headshot of yourself, send it to what's called Nancy Mosser Casting. They do a lot of the Pittsburgh shoots up here." And Terry and I both sent our pictures in.
Well, Brian told me that I had to send mine in, or he wasn't going to send his in. He really wanted to do it. So I went ahead and we took pictures of each other for our headshots, and we sent in the application. Actually, I found mine. I was looking through stuff and I found mine. I still have it.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool.
And I don't know where yours is at.
Well, it's in the scrapbook. We have 2 scrapbooks of the Mothman movie, but anyway.
But, yeah. So he made me fill mine out, and I had to send mine in along with his.
He made
and
you.
She actually had the opportunity, Steve, but she turned it down. Tell her why. Tell him why. Remember?
Yeah, I got called to go out to do the Christmas scene in.
Oh. Okay.
Katanning, I think.
In Katanning, but it was going to be a night shot. It was going to be. I had to get there at like 11 o'clock at night, and it was going to be during the night that they were filming this. And I couldn't bring anybody with me. I had to go by myself, and I really didn't want to go by myself that far at night.
Right.
So I just declined.
Oh, well, I have to ask you, Terry. Now they sent Brian sent in a headshot, but I happen to know that the part of the film he's in, you can barely see his body, much less his face. So.
Yeah, but hey, that briefcase gives it away, Steve. Just saying. And hey, thank God Jeffrey.
And that overcoat just, he covers them all up.
I was gonna say, thank God Jeffrey Talkington's not like on live. He'd say, "Oh, geez," like he always says.
No, absolutely.
That's kind of a running joke between all of us.
And Jeffrey is another a native of West Virginia that doesn't live too far from you.
Yeah, he doesn't. He lives like two exits up, I think, huh? Or 1 exit up. We've never gotten together yet. I want to get him and all of his friends down here, but we just haven't. We're just kind of like right now we can have visitors because we were just so cleaning up, right? And
yeah, well, you've got some of the old gang is right near where you live now.
We had boxes everywhere. We had to unpack things and get rid of the boxes and.
Oh God, I just am not looking forward to that.
We still got boxes in the garage.
We still got boxes in the garage.
We got to get rid of.
We can't even park our vehicles in there yet.
Oh God. So tell us, for those that don't know, that maybe have missed the brief split second that you're in the film, where would they see Brian Seech in the Mothman Prophecies if they wanted to see him?
So when John Keel, which is what's his name?
John Klein, played by
Yeah,
Richard
John.
Gere,
Yeah.
and Alan Bates played Dr. Leek.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as they're walking together up towards the library, they
Which
walk
is supposed
up.
to be it's supposed to be in Chicago in the film, right?
Yeah, but it's
Okay.
it's actually in Pittsburgh.
Right.
It's a cathedral learning there. And as they walk up, they make the left, and there's two figures coming again, a little bit far, but two figures coming, walking up. I'm the guy that's holding the briefcase, and there was the other guy with me. So I mean, you can't see my face, you just see my body, and I'm carrying that briefcase. That's how I identify myself. And I took a still shot of it on TV. I think I have it somewhere. But it was fun. We took, at the time when it came out, it was Terry and I and
Your mom and your brother.
So, and I knew it was when I knew the scene was coming, I go, look, and then I was gone. It was so quick.
So we had to buy the DVD to play it on the TV and slow it down to stop it just to see him.
But I actually shot for another scene, was in a park.
Okay.
And but I was me and this other lady were on the opposite side of the park when we were walking, so you didn't see us.
Okay. Now,
but it was fun. I got to right before we did our scene, it was real cold and blustery that day, and they had like a trailer parked outside of that cathedral, and Richard Gere was in there, and they were blow drying his hair, and I peeked in and looked, and I saw him, and I was like, man, to be a movie star like that, just think. And when me and that guy were standing there ready to do our walking,
right,
everyone's looking at us, and I turned to the guy and says, wow, look, this is what it is to be a star, huh? And we start laughing, and we start walking, and the one of the producers like, come on, you're walking too slow. Walk faster.
So you're telling me you did not get your hair blow dried or a pedicure?
Nothing. But it was funny how like they had like a barrier and people were watching like away from it, and how the people were looking, and of course they're looking for Richard Gere, and it was
right.
just cool. We're just standing there kind of like laughing because everyone's looking like, who are those two? It's like we are extras. We are nobodies.
we are Richard Gere's stunt doubles. So don't
But it's cool if anyone ever gets a chance to be an extra in a movie, because they do pay you, they feed you, and they pay you. Chances you get to see yourself for 1 second on film or something. That's about it. But
well, our friend Dwayne.
I wanted to do, like, they filmed. What's that?
Go ahead. What's what you were saying?
Oh, they filmed the one Batman movie at Heinz Field.
Okay.
And where the where the Steelers play. And I was thinking, man, should I go try to sit in for that? And then I could have said, hey, I was an extra in Mothman and Batman, but I didn't do it.
Well, wasn't Dwayne Pintoff? Didn't he his scene get pretty much cut?
No, I think Dwayne says that you see him really quick. I think he was a police officer, I think. But
well,
Dwayne,
he was a security guard, and what he told me was that it's a scene where Richard Gere's character is totally absorbed in the prophecies and everything that's going on, and he's trying to warn the governor that he thinks that a factory is going to blow up or something like that. And then I think Dwayne was one of the security guards that grabs him, and he wanted to know how hard, how rough should he be, and Gere told him, to let him have it. He wanted it to look real. And I think Richard Gere got a busted rib or something out of it.
Oh dear.
Oh wow.
Now it's my memory, so I could be wrong, but he put up a photo on Facebook of his you just see him like a blur in the background. So
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's too bad. You get you do all that, you get all excited, and your kind of scene gets cut, but still, it's just very cool to be part of that.
It is just to say you did it, and even being in the other couple, like in the new one, Flatwoods, it's a slight takeoff from Flatwoods, which very little about Flatwoods actually, but they filmed Fred and I down in our basement in the library, and basically we actually talked about real life UFO cases and things like that, and they incorporated that into the this one lady's looking for information about Flatwoods and the Men in Black, and they come after her and things like that. And that's what the basis of that movie Flatwoods is. I still haven't seen it. It's been out about 7 or 8 months, 6 or 7 months, maybe.
Oh, okay, so it's a wow. What was that? So it's fictional then. It's a story.
Oh yes, it's fictional.
Okay, all right. And okay, and I know that Small Town Monsters did one on Flatwoods as well, which I have not watched yet. But
it's a really good, high quality documentary on Flatwoods. Yeah, I would, if you get a chance to watch it, definitely.
By the way, Andy, there's going to be 6 or 7 of the Small Town Monsters features going to be shown over in the UK, and I think they said October or November. On various cable networks over there, and so you may see me on. Well, actually, the Mothman Legacy will be there. And
I've seen that one. I have seen you in that actually. Yes.
But you might actually see me on the telly over there if you watch carefully. So hopefully they'll be able to understand my. Go ahead.
You know what's interesting about the Mothman Legacy? We have Prime, Amazon Prime.
Right.
And if you pause on that on our TV anyway, and you hit Mothman Legacy, your picture comes up.
I know somebody sent that to me. It's like the basic preview for the video or whatever. And for some reason, my mug is right there. So that's it, man.
Yeah, that's funny.
It looks like I should just tell people that. Well, I'm the star. That's why I'm there. So Brian, you guys are always, you and Terrie are always involved in research and so forth. You've had a project for a while where you're kind of focusing on light anomalies and that kind of thing. And what do you call that project again?
It's called LAE, stands for Light Anomaly Exploration, and we're doing a series of, I guess, basically some tests and research into we call it light sphere, light spheres. A lot of people just call them orbs. We wanted to differentiate a little bit and just call them light spheres. And we've had the project for about 2 years. It's a real ongoing, slow project. We've had the move, getting the house ready a couple years ago, and then finally selling it. And it really put a cramp on us getting this project to where it is. We want to really pick it up more down here, and trying to get together certain data, like, are these things being seen with certain frequencies, or are these spheres being seen having anything to do with space weather, regular weather? Is there any correlation we can put why these things are seen or how they're seen? What characteristics when they're seen, what they do, how they act, how they interact. And that's kind of where we're at that right now.
And I think I remember you talking about how you would, when you spoke before audiences, sometimes you would ask people in the audience if they had seen this type of phenomena, and you got a pretty interesting response.
Yeah, we did the last time. It was a couple years ago that I spoke at Fred Saluga's Fayette County Bigfoot Day there down in Fayette County. And I said, people are seeing these things when they're looking for Bigfoot. They're seeing them at night. They're seeing them with their eyes, not taking a picture and have an orb appear, which could be dust or anything. And I says, how many people here believe they've seen a phenomenon like this? And there must have been about 15 or 20 hands that went up there was probably about 180 people there. But probably about 20 people put their hands up. And we got a couple reports that, actual physical reports that people actually wrote down on our forums. But I'm finding them in other books too. Like, there's a good book out, maybe you guys have read it or not. It's called Skinwalkers at the Pentagon.
Oh, that's George Knapp. It's kind of his sequel to their first book, The Hunt for the Skinwalker. I have it, but I haven't been able to read it yet. So do they deal with that there?
And there is one section, I specifically bought it on one section on blue orbs. And Well, you didn't read the Skinwalker, but in one instance there, the couple who lived on the ranch, they had their 3 dogs out on the porch, and this blue orb came by, and these dogs chased this blue orb into this grove, and they heard this horrible noise, and the dogs never came back. So the next morning they go out there and look, and there's like, they called it 3 greasy lumps that looked like that it might have been their dogs, and how these things just must have incinerated these dogs. And the interesting thing with these blue orbs too, in this book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, they talk about 3 blue orbs. It's a dad and her daughter driving down the road, and the daughter looks and sees these 3 orbs. She says they looked like they were playing with each other. They were going in zigzag patterns. When the car came by, they were shooting towards the car. 2 of the 3 of them went inside of the car. One just went inside the car, went across the dash. The other one went through the father's arm and out his shoulder, shoulder and then out of his arm. To make a long story short, this gentleman ended up getting sick. He had they found out he had symptoms of like radiation poisoning, and he got cancer. And so these blue orbs, if anyone's listening, who's ever listening, if you see a blue orb, you might not want to get too close to it, because these things, out of all of the different colors, the blue ones seem to be the bad ones. So,
I remember them talking about it on the Skinwalker Ranch, and how there was even they had kind of a fear of malevolence about them, something evil.
Yeah.
And I know that researcher Chris O'Brien was actually on the phone with Terry Sherman at that moment when they first started seeing these orbs, and he was so fed up with it, he sicked the dogs on them. Of course, he was sorry afterwards, because that horrible event happened. But there were orange orbs and so forth. Have you looked at any of the? There's a lot of reports where the orbs either transform into a cryptid or vice versa. Have you followed any of that at all?
Well, we've gotten, or read about it and received a report of where these orbs are seen, and then it would either precede a Bigfoot sighting, or it would happen after a Bigfoot sighting. So again, is the phenomena related, or are they just 2 phenomena, crossing together at a certain time, and there happens to be an observer to it? I don't know. We've never had one where somebody said, hey, it's an orb and it just transformed into a Bigfoot, say, like that. Not to say that those reports aren't out there, but we haven't received those yet. Anything like that yet.
I know that in Linda Godfrey's book, Monsters Among Us, she talks about a case in Pennsylvania, I think in the 80s, where a guy's driving around along Route 81 or 88. I don't know the roads there, but it's night. He sees this light moving through the woods very quickly, and he thinks it's a guy on some kind of a all-terrain vehicle driving crazily through the woods. But it's coming up to the road, and this guy would be dropping down pretty steeply to the pavement if in fact it was that. Well, he sees the light come down, and then it transforms into a classic dogman or upright canid, which just then sprints across the road. Now, if this report is true, I wonder what's happening there. Was this some kind of ball of energy that transformed into this creature, like one of John Keel's transmogrifications, or is that what happens when a flesh and blood cryptid comes from another realm or a window area? It looks like it's coming through an orb, but maybe that's not it at all. And then I think about Lee Hampel's farm near Bray Road, where these footprints appear out of nowhere. Ron Moorhead in the Sierra Nevadas, he talked about seeing light phenomena, like you mentioned, that people see Bigfoots and see these light anomalies in those areas. So he's seen those light anomalies, and also he's seen footprints disappear in the middle of nowhere. So you kind of get these patterns, but it's really a fascinating area. And go ahead.
Oh, what I was going to say, the interesting thing about that is, we took our first Dogman case, me, Terry, and Fred, 2007 in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, and it was an eyewitness that Jody Cook told us about.
Okay.
Well, she claims she was at night, and this creature is crossing the road, and she said this thing looked like the American Werewolf in London. And she said it looked like it was actually transforming as it was running across. They said that there was places where there was no fur and you could see skin. She said almost like it was like if you got, if you remember American Werewolf in London, the scene where
Yes.
he transforms into the werewolf. She said that's what it looked like. And interesting, this creature ran from left to right and it ran towards what? A power substation. And we've had a couple other sightings where this creature has either ran into a power substation or was very close to one, or the one case up in Newcastle where there was a big lightning storm. A storm was coming in, a lot of lightning, and a lady and her daughter were just walking around, just getting exercise. And the young daughter goes into the car. The lady goes, she's just going to take one more quick pass and come back to the car. So when she left, she crested the hill. And this little 4 foot tall, looked like a werewolf type creature, walks through the woods and starts snarling and walking around the car. And then the lightning's getting closer, and so the creature goes into the woods just as the mother is coming back to the car. And of course she gets back to the car and the daughter's all shook up. Now again, here's a case, electricity, a lot of electricity in that atmosphere, or storm. One of these creatures appear. Do these at least dogmen creatures need some kind of energy to manifest? It is interesting.
I know Keel has talked about the way these manifestations seem to occur during lightning storms a lot as well. So it's just another, Ted Phillips, who we lost not too long ago. He was a friend and colleague of Dr. Hynek, and Phillips, of course, was known for investigating. What's that?
Physical trace cases, yeah.
Yes, thousands of them. And he, whether it were landing marks or radiation traces, burn marks in the branches, or effects on individuals. And he's the one that discovered, well, he didn't discover it. He was told about this area in southern Missouri that he would call Marley Woods. Now, I guess people actually know where that is, but he tried to keep it quiet. But he said that this is somebody like me who had, investigated this stuff forever. Although I never did the in-depth investigations he did, but he had never seen anything. So he goes to Marley Woods, this small geographical area, and he starts seeing these light anomalies. And they're balls of light that sometimes they'll come together, they'll separate, they'll move around playfully, like you described earlier. And he said that he found that the general descriptions of the types of UFOs had changed somewhat. I mean, you would still get the metallic looking classic flying saucer or cigars or whatever, and the giant triangles. But an awful lot of them now then seem to be more like light phenomena, like basketball size or whatever, that you would not associate with a nuts and bolts craft.
And it's like, so you wonder, are they sentient? Are they energy? Are they sentient? Are they probes for UFOs? I mean, there's so many different theories about what they could be.
Andy, have you encountered anything like that, or in your research or whatever, and have any insight as to what we might be dealing with?
My only real impression is of the various cases I've read about is that they often seem to be the first sign of something happening. Often descriptions of light, anomalies, balls of light are the same as Brian. I would like to avoid the word orb because that tends to be a connotation as ridiculous things you see in photographs, which of course know dust or moisture. So those sort of energy balls of light. And the idea that they can begin in that form and then take on a particular form that fits with what you're expecting or believe or hope to see, if you like. I very much believe in that kind of idea, that perhaps the balls of light are in the purest essence, if you like, the purest form. I mean, I know I've talked about this probably more than one occasion in the past, but particularly an area of interest of mine, which is the Dyatlov Passes in 1959 in the Ural Mountains in Russia, where those 9 hikers died. There were stories or tales at the time of lights being seen in the sky that may have been possibly missiles or UFOs, etc. But also there were a couple of reports much more recently in the area of 2 different people who were very much used to being in mountainous regions and out in the woods and forests, who wouldn't be scared. One was a security guard at a local mine. Another one was basically a guy who was out sort of a ranger type fellow. Both of them saw yellowy white lights moving through the woods towards them and were actually quite scared by them. Now, these were both very heavily armed guys. One was a security, as I say, so protecting territory. Another one was well used to being out in the woods. So they were armed and were used to animals around them, but were both quite spooked by this yellowy white light they both saw. Independently of each other, they saw it. Now, one of them told a local newspaper and the other one saw the report. And basically, they got together to discuss what they'd experienced, and both said they'd never experienced anything like it before. It wasn't just the fact the light was there; it was the fear they felt, this almost in kind of instinctual desire to keep the hell away from whatever the light was. So I do think there's something to that whole idea that we are dealing with things that take on the light to normally form in the first place, and then perhaps do manifest as something else. But I think, as Brian sort of mentioned before, the idea that the energy itself might be sentient somehow, that these are almost non-fully corporeal beings that are actually aware and are actual intelligent beings. And then, as I say, they take on the form that kind of fits what perhaps we're expecting or what we think we're going to see. I've had a few occasions on ghost investigations, paranormal investigations, where we have seen some strange light anomalies. One I might have talked about before, which is a little bit in line with what Ron Moorhead apparently saw on one occasion when he was out in the bluff, when he had those very strange audio recordings of the
Oh, yeah.
the Bigfoot was sounded like almost speaking a language. And on one occasion, he spoke about seeing a beam of light, a bit like a sort of a strip light beam, a neon beam, literally moving through the woods slowly about a foot or so above the ground, which then suddenly disappeared. On an investigation of a castle in the UK called Dudley Castle, one of the Undercroft rooms, there was a group of about 5 or 6 of us, basically just sitting quietly, lights off, waiting for some anomaly to occur. And suddenly, in between the group of us, all sitting in sort of a large circle, a beam, like a meter long, like a beam of light, literally like a lightsaber beam of light, appeared and then shot across the room. We all saw it, all quite rather freaked out by it, not sure what on earth to make of it. It was a very odd experience, just seeing this literally like a laser beam, if you like a meter long beam of light just appeared in the circle in front of us and then shot across the room. So that was pretty strange. That was one that really rather stuck in my mind. Well, other occasions we've seen like balls of light, if you like, but often just fleeting and passing. But that particular one really sticks with me, that side of that. As I say, it's about a meter long. It was like a blue-white light just appeared before us and then shot across the room. That was very strange.
There's a Paul Devereaux, who's written a lot of books on Earth energies. In fact, one of them called Earth energies. He coined the term proto-entity. And that's where the light or whatever seems to be connected to the cryptid or the craft. It's like there's no separation. He even talks about a classic sort of a Mothman-like manifestation. Almost 3 years to the day that the Scarberries and the Mallets saw the Mothman in 66 in Point Pleasant, in 1963 in Kent somewhere. Some kids were coming back from a dance, and they saw this light, amorphous light, descend behind the trees, and a light appeared again. That at some point they see this shuffling creature with wings, very, very similar to the Mothman, minus the red eyes, where it shows up. And he gives a lot of gives cases that go even back in the 1800s, where the witness is standing along the shoreline. This ball of light comes in from the ocean, and then transforms into a woman holding a child, walks off, and then disappears. So how do you? He gives a whole series of these great. And let me mention one other one. I don't have the date. It's sometime in the 80s, I think. Nottingham Canal. There are 3 kids. They see the mist is rising up off the canal. Then it kind of forms into a ball of light. It starts to follow them. They get the hell out of there. And when they look back, 2 of them are seeing something that looks like a Bigfoot creature forming. Kind of like the outline. They see it's big, and they didn't actually use the term Bigfoot, but what they described sounded like a Bigfoot. And the 3rd kid, while he did see the light, couldn't understand why they were so freaked out, because he did not see the Bigfoot creature at all. So people were experiencing these things differently as well.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because one of my kind of more long-term projects I'm working on is, I've got this collection of folklore books from the 1800s in the UK, a folklore society collection, is going through those, because there are some very strange, very, very strange sightings. People have recorded first-hand experiences of unusual things, and one of the things I'm going to look out for are sort of light-based anomalies, because I say a bit of a personal fascination with the whole idea of light being the first sign of something happening. So I'd be interested to see what I come across. If there are any kind of proper kind of transfiguration type experiences of seeing first light, then some kind of figure in those books. I mean, I've got over 40 of these actual volumes, plus I've had a small collection of the actual magazine itself that came out in the sort of 1800s. So it's going to be a long-term project to go through all these things of the various writing projects I'm working on, but it's one I do intend to eventually get done. So be interested what I find from those.
Yeah, look up the term hobby lantern over there, and
yeah,
hobby lantern. Yep,
absolutely.
Yep. Corpse lights, hobby lantern.
Yeah.
Well, there's and also I guess you find this type of light phenomena in all kinds of literature. The book on dubbed whales by Pugh and Holliday. They talk about all the 7-foot silver suited beings, the little guys who look like leprechauns, the egg-shaped craft, and so forth. But they also it was a case where the who was it, the Ripperstons, they were chased by a green orb or something like that back to their farm. And one thing is, Brian, maybe you've I don't know how if you found this, but there's a lot of animal reaction to some of these things. Where that's something that if you got if people will say, oh, you're crazy, you're imagining things. Well, if the animal is reacting, sensing something, then no, there's really some kind of a phenomena there.
Yeah,
it's hard to fool the animals. I mean, when they're scared, they're scared.
Yeah, they're not going to be faking it, are they?
So this is kind of, I know you guys have been distracted with a lot of stuff, but this research project is still kind of in its infancy.
Yeah,
the light anomalies.
Yeah, because again, it actually came along in a time when we were super busy we had to fix up our house. We were doing things with our house, and then we sold the house, and we're down here, and then bad weather.
Temporarily for about 11 months we were renting until we moved down here.
Yeah, so we had to move twice. Yeah, we had to move twice.
Man, don't you wish you could just flip a light switch and everything's fixed?
Yeah. And we got rid of so many things too from our old house that we lived in how many years? 20 years. 20 years. Like you're going through now, Steve.
Yeah, it's just I haven't gotten rid of enough stuff, I don't think.
Well,
I agree.
Well, that's what we keep saying too.
We're still finding stuff we're getting rid of.
After we moved down here, we were still getting rid of. We made like 5 or 6 trips to the Goodwill with carloads of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we've been doing that. Yeah.
Well, we've got this to come next year, guys, because we're probably moving as well. So we're going to go for the same experience after 20 years here. So it's going to be
do
fun.
A special show on the woes of moving.
Yes.
So what else are you guys involved in these days? When you have a spare moment?
Well, we're starting to look at some of the mysteries here of West Virginia, especially in the northern Panhandle. Which for us it would be Hancock Brook and Ohio counties, and we find a couple. The one was called Bashful Billy. I don't know if you ever heard of that one.
No.
The 1952, it happened, I think, three nights after the Flatwoods in 52, where it's supposedly around Oglebay, actually right around where John Lee lives now, because he lives fairly close to Oglebay. And there was a light in the sky, and people said that it crashed, and it allegedly burned. Something burned a woman, and there was allegedly an alien involved. And the next day, in the newspaper, they kind of made fun of it in the newspaper. And I have the news. Grab me that article right over there. I'm going to read it.
And you said this is only a few days after Flatwoods?
Yeah, it would have been September
14th, 52 is like Flatwoods. So, okay. Oh, no. Was it 14th? I don't know.
It's 12th. Here's 17th. It says here. I got let me see here. September night in 1952.
Okay.
And then it said the next day, wait a minute, and this happened, Bashful Billy allegedly happened 3 days later on September 15th, 1952. There was a bright light streaking across the sky near Ogle Bay. Terrific metallic smell also came from the Vineyard Hills area. Police were fielding calls across the city like something happened. So basically, the next day, it's called the Intelligencer, was a newspaper. It ran It says it ran a rather upbeat story about the reports, with the police chief brushing it off as a joke. The creature coined by the Intelligencer as Bashful Billy supposedly vanished without pausing to light one cigarette of his fiery breath. So it says, monster from outer space arrives here via saucer. It says, powered by suggestion. So I got the actual article right here. So, so that's one we're trying to look into, see if we can dig up anything on that since we're down there. That happened in Wheeling. We live in Weirton, so it's about an hour away.
45 minutes.
45 minutes away. Another thing that happened fairly close to us in the 80s was called the Beast of Bell Hill. Apparently something around here was killing animals, killing cats, killing livestock. Whether this was a big cat sighting, possibly a mountain lion, or some people said it possibly could have been a Bigfoot sighting. I put a little thing out on Facebook down here about a couple of these things, and I got some interesting things, especially about the Beast of Bell Hill. Like one time, somebody said that something broke into their barn, ate all the grain. Another time, somebody found a cow half tore up and put in the tree. So again, this was in the mid 80s, and Bell Hill actually is not that far from us, maybe 2 or 3 miles.
Well, that's another. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go.
Lee Hampel mentioned he was putting out these cameras to try and catch a glimpse of these things that were taking away the roadkill or whatever. And by the way, you could, when you looked at the timestamp on his pictures, you would see things like a classic flying saucer zipping around a tree. You could see how many seconds it took. But also there was a carcass of a deer or something out on his property, and you see it at night, and then these strange mists would keep rolling in, and then after a period of time, the mist is gone, and so's the carcass. No footprints, no drag marks. And he tried that several times. He dropped several different animals, deceased animals on the property, and they keep vanishing like that. And you wonder, what the heck? I mean, this place is, you try to wrap your head around these things, when you put all these things together, the strange light phenomena and the reactions on people and the seeming behavior. And supposedly we have rational minds to try to go from A, B to C to D and form some kind of a conclusion. But man, it's so difficult to try and make these things fit. So the work you're doing is what I look at is to try and find various patterns and parallels in these different things. Yeah. And that's important.
I agree. A lot of people aren't doing that. They're just out, looking for one facet of the subject, like most Bigfoot researchers. They're out there, they're looking for a giant ape in the woods, right? I think it's too simplified to say Bigfoot's just Gigantopithecus or undiscovered North American primate. There's a missing piece of the Bigfoot puzzle. I've always felt that. I don't know what that piece is. I wish I had some kind of an idea. I feel stupid when I talk to people about it, but I just don't know. I think there's a missing piece.
It just seems to be too elusive, doesn't it, for it to be just a normal flesh and blood creature? I mean, even if it's pretty intelligent, you must, you're going to come across a corpse, or they're going to come across them more regularly. There's something else is going on. I mean, there's too many occasions these things have been seen to be all just made up, definitely. But there's got to be something more going on for them to appear and disappear the way people describe that. You just can't catch them. It's no fun. We don't really have it over here. I mean, obviously, UK is much, much smaller. We get occasional odd report of that sort of thing, but I think it's possibly people trying to kind of compete with America on that scale, because we don't have the vast open lands that you guys have. So it's for us, it's more of an American phenomenon, but we have strange creatures that occasionally are seen that then seem to disappear as well. But I do find the old Bigfoot absolutely fascinating.
But yeah, that's what I agree that I'm going to put a plug in here for Azealia Edgar. Her first book, Just Another Tinfoil Hat Presents, which is sort of a companion to her YouTube channel, but she
Mhm.
goes into much greater depth. I just when I read her sections, and not only does she find some cryptid reports I've never heard of, I'm not jealous at all, but the way she's sort of like a almost like John Keel on steroids. I mean, she's got this great eye to look at the whole spectrum, and she finds these fascinating patterns and parallels in all these different cases. And that's where I think that perhaps we will at least gain more knowledge, even begin to solve some of these mysteries by doing that. Because, like you were saying, Brian, if you just look at it narrowly ahead, well, this person saw this Bigfoot and so forth, and this is what happened. But you really kind of have to step back and look at the whole experience, the whole phenomena.
Yeah,
Because then you find,
the whole phenomena. It's
Yeah.
well, you
we don't know
like
what these phenomena
yeah,
are, you know.
right.
I think a lot of these phenomena are multifaceted, and just everybody wants to have a cookie cutter explanation for everything. Let's be honest. They want to put, ghosts are only deceased spirits of people
Right.
who were alive, and Bigfoot's got to be a giant ape, and all UFOs are extraterrestrial. I think there may be multiple explanations for all of these phenomena.
And Zelia uncovered one that I don't think she thinks nobody else has found. In her research, she called it the Sandusky Sasquatch, Sandusky, Ohio. Well, this guy sees the Sasquatch, and this is the Reader's Digest version here, and he reports it. And then sometime later, he's visited by little guys, entities like classic ET types, and the impression he got, they were angry at him for reporting on his Bigfoot sighting or whatever this was.
I never heard that one.
Yeah, I know, but it's one of the chapters in her book. So do you guys, this is for all of you. Do you find that sometimes you're doing the research, putting things together, and your brain thinks, oh, you know what, I got a piece of the puzzle. This is starting to make sense, and then it all goes to hell when you find another case or something that just doesn't fit.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. Especially some people like all three of us who we're broad based. We don't just concentrate on one thing. And that's why with Q, we wanted to make it as generic as possible, because we wanted to and we still do. We research all facets of the unknown. And somebody asked me one time, a Bigfoot researcher, I'm not going to mention his name, from out west. He says, why don't you just concentrate on one thing? I says, because that's boring. There's so many different mysteries. There's actually, there's the Fey folk, there's the Fey realm, gnomes, fairies. Even that's something that our friend Leah, who you should try to get her on your show.
I will.
Steve, oh my gosh, she has like so much information on fairies and the Fey realm, about these little creatures, can come in and out. It's just fascinating. And if people laugh at the fairies and the small gnomes, I'll say, well, if a big giant 8-foot tall ape is hard to find, what do you think a little like 10 or 12-inch entity would be almost impossible? No one's looking down, right? I mean, you're looking straight ahead so you don't trip. Not many people look down when they're in the woods either. And it's just something small could, if they aren't like an interdimensional thing that can pop in and out, if they're possibly out there, how are you going to find them? I mean, it might lend more credibility to it,
I think one of the problems is, unfortunately, that it's a kind of a Disney effect. I think when it comes to things like gnomes and fairies, they're a bit Disneyfied, as if they're kind of harmless little creatures. But if you read some of these Victorian folklore accounts of people's experience of these things, they are not nice. They are quite dangerous,
yes, I agree.
Quite nasty, and yet they're still kind of seen as being almost comical, but not from what I've read, certainly. And I do think, going back to what you were saying before about these things forming in the way we want to see them, we think back in the Victorian times and earlier, that's what people saw as anomalous phenomena, were things like fairies and pixies. That's how they were described. Now we talk about aliens and some spaceships, that kind of thing. So I think it does lend credence to the idea that we see them in accordance with what we expect. I mean, this is the one kind of half theory I've ever really got kind of come up with, that that these things are amorphous. They don't have a particular form, and they change according to what we expect of them to be like. That doesn't mean to say that they don't exist beyond us, because they definitely do, but I don't think there's a definite identity to them, and it tends to evolve in time, and that I find particularly fascinating.
Well, and sometimes you'll get the entity, the supposed ET that has buckles on his tunic. You know, there was I'm trying to remember one of the attempted dog nappings. Oh God, what was the guy's name? But these little guys with those kind of tunics said, "We don't mean no harm. We just want your dog." So he had a few choice words for whoever they were, fairies or ETs. But also you look at some of the classic cases, and if you were to exchange the style of clothing from, say, leprechaun to silver suited extraterrestrial, the being looks and sounds very much the same as the same creature.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Is there any other directions you guys would like to go to?
We look forward to, if it ever stops snowing and it ever gets warm, ever, then.
Well, wait a minute. I thought it was warmer in West Virginia.
That's what we thought
Well,
too.
not this winter.
It's funny. Fred Saluga lives probably
10 minutes down the
10
road.
minutes down the road, and he's lived here over 10 years.
Yeah.
He said it.
This is the worst he's ever seen it.
He goes, ever since you guys come down, this is the worst winter we've ever had.
So now you get blamed.
Yeah.
I remember in 2009, I went down to Point Pleasant. The Paranormal State kids went down there for a Return to Mothman event.
Yep.
This is before when the show was still going on and so forth. And it was a lot of fun, but I figured, man, I'm coming down from Michigan. I'm going to at least bank about 10 or 15 degrees warmer, right? Well, this cold front followed me all the way down. And it's funny because Chip Coffey was there, the well-known psychic medium. And he's, I think, originally from Georgia. And that poor guy was freezing his off. So that was, you just can't count. And yeah, it's been kind of not been a lot of fun up here in Michigan either. But anyway, it's always good to talk to you guys. And I can't wait to see you in person again. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll get you down here and we'll get the whole gang together.
But please tell us, I know you've got websites and so forth for people to report cryptid sightings and ways to contact you guys. So give us that information.
Well, it's not websites, but it's on Facebook.
Okay,
so
good enough.
Center for Unexplained Events has its own Facebook page. You can reach us through that. And Center for Cryptozoological Studies also has a Facebook page. You can reach us through that. We have a page that's Strange Tales of Beaver County when we were living up there. And we do hope to start a Strange Tales of Hancock County since we're down here. That isn't started yet, but we hope to start that. So all of those is where you can reach us at.
Are you guys planning on doing any conferences on your neck of the woods in the future?
We're looking into it to see if we can find a venue to have something. We really do want to have something.
We do want to have something down here. We want to, us along with Fred, who has our sister group, West Virginia Q. We're going to work with him and hopefully be starting to scout out locations for like the probably in the fall, I'm guessing, late summer, early fall.
Good deal. And well, guys, thank you for being here tonight on this. Never thought I'd make 3 years, And Andy and I are going to look forward to the a raise in our checks on the 1st coming, and they're going to double our per diem. So if we have to do any traveling, so that's going to be excellent. And Andy, I'm glad you were able to make it tonight, and I appreciate. Since we started this a few years ago, I've just appreciated your support, and it's been a really great experience.
Yeah, it's been good fun. Hopefully the next 3 years I shall be more of a regular co-host rather than the occasional I have been in the past. But life gets in the way sometimes. But yeah, it's been great fun tonight. I've been a bit of a passenger with this one. I've been mainly sort of listening rather than sort of joining in, but it's been a great conversation. So I've just enjoyed sitting back and listening.
Well, it's always
great
fun
talking to you again.
Yeah, it's been good talking to you for the brief bit I did.
well, we will continue the tradition next year. We'll have
Oh, yeah,
everybody back,
absolutely.
and we'll do it again. So
Okay.
I should have at least one more show coming up, and maybe a hopefully a brief hiatus while I'm going through the chaos and confusion that that Brian and Terrie Seech have gone through and are still going through a little bit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll close it out.
Okay, thanks, guys. It's been fun. Thank you for
Okay.
having us.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks,
Okay,
Andy.
my
That's been
pleasure. And everybody sit tight. We'll talk for a minute afterwards.
Okay.
The High Strangest Factor was created by Steve Ward and Andy Mercer and is copyrighted by the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I want to thank Irene Allen Block and Mark Johnson for the opportunity to do this show, and Andy Mercer as co-creator, producer, and co-host, and technical advisor, always making the show better. Also, Brian Zeller, who is the composer of the theme music for the show. I can also be heard weekly on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files as a correspondent on this same network. And I am Steve Ward, your humble host here on the High Strangeness Factor, a displaced Yank on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Thank you for listening. I will see you all again in a fortnight. Take care.